Hey y'all, welcome to Circuit Skill Builder's February demo debate on the ICC topic. The participants today will be Leon Love from Harker, Tristan Mankovksy from Potomac, Justin Wang from Canyon Crest, and Sumith Murthy from Strake Jesuit. They'll give us a demonstration of some of the arguments that we saw the last month, and hopefully it'll be insightful. We'll also have Annika Gupta from Nueva giving her thoughts as the round progresses.
We negate. First, a statute is useless. A. Article 124 allows circumvention. Dannenbaum 24. Article 124, the statute declared for 7 years after entry, it doesn't accept jurisdiction. Invoking Article 124, give officials a free pass to commit war crimes. B. Article 98 means no consequences. Perry 24. Article 98 provides states the ability to grant immunity to other nations. Allies know they'll face sanctions unless they give immunity. C. The Hague Invasion Act triggers. Page 19. The Hague Invasion Act mandated the use of all means necessary to free U.S. personnel detained by the ICC. A military invasion of the Netherlands should be fantasy, but we have a president that operates in that section. Contention 1 is politics. The debt ceiling will be raised. Gangotino 25. Trump expressed confidence that Dems will raise the debt limit. Republicans work around Democratic opposition. Johnson said the House could advance the resolution. Affirming freedom of Congress. Patrick 14. Treaty making involves Senate consent. Seeking treaties requires enormous PC and floor time. Human rights face objections of violating sovereignty. Defaulting destroys the dollars. Humphrey 23. Defaulting would downgrade the nation's credit rating, hurt financial prestige, and collapse the dollar. In default, the dollar would lose its position, forcing companies to pay in another currency. That causes worse. Offer 20. The dollar offers an alternative to military action. Broad use means being cut off is a death sentence. That makes sanctions powerful. The dollar has been used to Kenyan adversaries. Contention 2 is Taiwan. China will invade now. Astana 24. The cost of unification by invasion would be high militarily, economically, and politically. Chinese red line of Taiwan declaring independence has not been crossed, giving no justification. China is aware it will put its aim of rejuvenation out of gear. Affirming provides a means for independence. Chopper 24. Taiwan would join the ICC. The ICC confirmed this is valid. However, no actions were taken. The hesitation stemmed from concerns that joining the court could strain relations with the U.S., which remains antagonistic. The public process of litigating would provide Taiwan a platform to articulate the legal argument for statehood. That forces invasion. Yang 19. Taiwan independence translates to the CCP failing unified territory and undermines legitimacy and encourages secessionist movements. Leaders cannot afford the consequences. The deputy director warned China would accelerate reunification. That caused nuclear war. Petty John 22. If China attempted to invade Taiwan, a conflict could escalate. China's nuclear arsenal mean that a fight could go nuclear. Its leaders may not be able to accept failure. The CCP takes significant risks. That would mean convincing the U.S. that the cost of defending Taiwan are high. Using nuclear weapons may be the most effective means. Contention 3 is Israel. U.S.-Israel ties remain strong, but Trump restrains Israel. Kurtzer Ellenbogen 25. Netanyahu becomes the first leader to meet Trump since his return. While Trump lifted a pause on bombs to Israel, Trump has signaled expectation for de-escalation and broader deal-making. This will require Israel to grapple with post-war governance. The U.S. seeks to leverage ceasefire momentum to achieve broader goals. Conventional conflict doesn't escalate. K23. The states face acute economic problems. The expanded war would disrupt their economic projects. No player wants to make a bad situation worse. The Aff flips U.S. support. Balance Chandran 24. Netanyahu was under stress over an arrest warrant, which would deteriorate Israel's international status. America has rejected the decision. Netanyahu is waiting for Trump to pull him out. It destroys negotiations. Cohen 24. The ICC will reinforce the perception among Israelis that the world is out to get them. It will be hard to play peacemaker if Israeli leaders cannot travel without fear of arrest. Preemptive strikes ensue. McConnell 10. Israel is terrified of being alone in the international arena. Suspicion that the U.S. is backing away incite Israel to behave more aggressively. A panicked and unrestrained Israel armed with 200 nukes could turn into a desperado striking at will in the Gulf. It spills over into great power war. Avery 20. Israel's extreme nervousness might develop into World War III. An attack on Iran would escalate into a large-scale war. Russia and China allies drawn in. Extinction. Crib 19. Detonating just 50 nuclear weapons would end civilization in nuclear winter, causing famine and economic collapse, the most likely scenario for the termination of humans. Contention 4 is alliances. Alliances are strong. South 24. Japan and Tokyo revealed confidence in Washington, grounded in understanding that bipartisan consensus drive commitment to contain China, a goal that requires reliable allies. Trump's return does little to change these. Affirming Rex deployments. Float 6. Fear mentality affect generals. If they believe actions will be critiqued by an international judge, commanders withdraw entirely to protect troops from prosecution. The U.S. military has deep anxiety about the court. Ambiguity guarantees it. Group 9. The court has yet to define the crime of aggression. Every decision by the U.S. could use source could give cause to file charges. The U.S. would find itself defending its military against frivolous and politically motivated charges. Withdrawal causes proliferation. Branch 24. American withdrawal devastate non-prolif. As long as the alliances are credible, allies have better options. If the U.S. pulls back, allies feel they face a choice between prolif and suicide. Extinction. Kamala 23. The spread of nukes in Asia poses two threats to security. The first is deliberate first strike in fear of attack or preventive war. The second is inadvertent escalation out of a conventional war. Contention 5 is constitutionality. Separation of powers checks Trump. Weber 25. Trump pushed the legal boundaries of executive authority, yet there's no sign that the administration is choosing not to not comply with the courts. The Supreme Court is not going to restructure the separation of powers the way Trump wants. Affirming violates the Constitution. Casey 18. Participation would subject citizens to a court not established under Article 3. Defendants wait more than a year in prison before trial. Anonymous witness and hearsay have been allowed. The ICC wouldn't preserve the right to jury. A check on abuse. Cut the next card. It ultimately destroys separation. Cruz 14. Treaties become a vehicle to accumulate power and infringe on sovereignty. The government implements treaties as the laws that the Supreme Court held as exceeding powers, supplanting separation of powers. Treaty power become a loophole that isn't authority. Extinction. Lesser 20. Imperial presidency has become more powerful than intended. Leviathan armed with weapons that can eradicate civilization. This drastic increase poses issues. The unilateral authority makes it inflict injuries against society. Anyone not ready?
We affirm. Eventual deportations. Deportation will be fast and furious. Brown 25. Trump promised millions of deportations. Pressure to get numbers up yield inhumane measures. Administration lifted restraints, authorized wide powers. Rights to disaster and capabilities exist. Morsi 25. Trump built detention facilities. Fast track cases using military and law enforcement to assist officials. Expansion of expedited removal. Allow deportation without a judge. Legal devices allow them to sidestep laws ruled likely not to be followed. And ICC law bans this. Matala 19. The ICC is an avenue to hold US accountable for human rights on border. Upheld jurisdiction over Myanmar's deportation. Article 7 defines crime against humanity of deportation. Migrants deported forcibly displaced defined as violence, psychological oppression. U.S. now have grounds to deport. Mass detention, separation, and widespread coercion violate international human rights. And deportations collapse the economy. AIC 24. Deportation lose trillions in output due to loss of workers, taxes, purchasing power to support businesses. Lose 6.8% of GDP. GDP shrank only by 4% during the Great Recession. And decline causes great power war. Brand 21. Slow growth makes it hard to keep the public happy. Fearing up people, leaders grab resources, making nationalism a crutch. Many follow. When the U.S. economic surge ended, Washington engaged in expansion. Facing slowdown, Putin invaded two countries. They fear of decline, a powerful motive for urgent expansion. Advantage 2 is UUVs. UUVs are coming. Tripathi 25. US aims to deploy lethal autonomous drones in Taiwan by August. Officials call this a hellscape. These systems will be networked to form a cohesive force, and Taiwan's dependent. DN Yazin 24. Taiwan's new drone submarine is a sign of weakness. The Smart Dragon isn't capable of combat. A test platform. Taiwan's struggling to develop vehicles. Drone industry produce military drones, but not in sufficient numbers. But affirming bans laws. Hassan 23. A system manufacturer can be held liable. Technology has reached a demand by the international community to protect borders from being invaded. The ICC provides a solution to AI where individuals will be liable if they went beyond the borders allowed under law, and that perceptually deters developers. Smith and 22. Areas of concern for AI on the battlefield. Hesitancy is related to a fear of being held liable for mistakes by technology. Otherwise, China first strikes. Johnson 20. UAVs could be deployed to locate and destroy nuclear submarines. If the state views its nukes to be at risk, the perception alone of an operation creates incentives to strike preemptively. Encounters Taiwan would be more destabilizing. UAVs threaten China's nuclear submarines. Even if UAVs are programmed to threaten China's non-nuclear fleets, commanders might fear their country's SSBN's fleets could be neutralized. Adventures 3 is cyber. Trump's pursuing aggressive cyber policy. Vikram 24. Trump contrasts Biden will focus on power, doubling down to destabilize cyber and spill into physical domain. As the U.S. faces in Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China, aggressive doctrine relaxing restrictions. Trump alter how adversaries perceive the U.S. and spark their pursuit of cyber. And nominations prove. Hard 25. Pick for CIA director signal Trump will take a more aggressive approach to cyber war, targeting China using offensive cyber operations. Advisor promised offense. And Trump 2.0 lacks guardrail. 724. Trump's second term stuck with loyalists focused on implementing agenda. Fewer officials act as guardrails, enable impulse. First administration bulwark against controversial ideas and coordinated to thwart Trump. Trump fully in control. And a session de-escalates, adhering to non-offense. Rules in 23. ICC purview includes cyber attacks, target essential services, comms, power infrastructure, command, controlling intel for military tactics, interpreted as war crimes. By targeting cyber aggressions, ICC set a standard for current military doctrine. Legal uncertainty has consequences for U.S. cyber ops, reconsidering strategy in response to legal landscape. And Fiat makes the session binding. A dictionary, no date. Accede to adhere, agree to the terms of treaty, and that caps risks. ICANN 22. Any use of nukes will have wide-ranging consequences. A single destination would kill hundreds of thousands. Use of nuclear weapons is defined as war crime, giving the destructive power and humanitarian consequences. And the ICC deters perpetrators. Article 21. The court deter would be perpetrators because of the threat of prosecution. Even erratic leaders engage in cost-benefit analysis when committing violence, were trained to stay in power. And indeed, quote 24. Joining ICC encourages us to make careful choices when decisions involve military. Choice rests on officials. Considering legal liability encourages better guidelines. And US LCOs cause escalation. Jensen 19. Policy shifts create a new risk of offensive cyber triggering escalation between great powers. Fear, suspicion, misperception create escalations that risk war. Difficult to differentiate. What the US called defending China, Russia called it preemptive strike. Prosper assumes all infrastructure are preparing for follow-on strikes. All cyber ops interpreted as escalatory by adversaries. The US refrain. The US has neglected security and weapon systems. New weakness throughout infrastructure. Defensive operations increase resiliency. Undermine adversary offensive. Restraint can shape norms in cyber. And that escalates. Miller and 17. Small spark and cyber could rapidly escalate from unintended effects, could result in widespread loss of essential services. Attacks compelled to respond tit for tat cycle occur. One side believe it could gain an advantage, lead to major conflict and nuclear war. Affirm.
Good for Cross.
I'm so good. You can have first
Can
question.
I take the first question?
Yeah, go ahead.
On deportations, why didn't COVID or the 2008 recession cause great power war?
Yeah, right now there's more conflict hotspots in places like Israel or Russia that didn't exist back then, which is why it's uniquely likely that one of these, due to a horrible economy, will spiral over into nuclear war. Can I take a
that's fine.
question?
Yeah.
Cool. Would reforming the Constitution just solve your C5?
No, our argument is that reforming the Constitution is bad because that destroys separation of powers. So if you get up and say that
Would
fiat
reforming
solves,
the
that makes it worse.
Constitution in like any way, for example, to actually reinstate separations of powers, like solve C5?
No, I would. Well, A, you have to actually read evidence that when you affirm, you reinstate separation of powers. I'd say that's not true because it just creates loopholes in the Constitution, but
Okay,
that's
how
fine.
so?
I
How are
take
there
a
going to be
question.
loopholes?
Sorry, what?
How are there going to be loopholes? Like, if
Because
we
the
can,
evidence indicates that if they can reinterpret the Constitution for the ICC, Trump justifies that as being able to reinterpret the Constitution for anything else. Can I take a question?
that's fine. Go ahead.
Let's talk about cyber. Why hasn't Trump done aggressive cyber attacks yet?
He's going to specifically his like the new like cybersecurity guy he hired is calling for offense. Can I
Well,
take a
why
question?
hasn't he done so yet?
He's going to. Can I take a
Why?
question?
Sure.
Well, I mean, if you want like a clear answer, it's like you don't just like do things immediately. That has to like pass through government. But insofar as his like entire cabinet is all for like offensive cyber operations, it's definitely going to happen very soon, which is probably not a great thing. Can I take a question?
Sure.
Let's talk about politics. The Senate has disagreed over treaties in the past, right?
Yes, but not recently.
Okay, why uniquely now is this treaty going to be so disagreed upon that everyone lets the United States default?
Right. Our evidence indicates that that's because the debt ceiling is very, very close now. You say that we've disagreed over treaties in the past, and we agree, but that's never been during a time where the margins for raising the debt ceiling have been so low, which is why uniquely, if you affirm right now, it makes the issue like it just actually causes us to default because it means that we
Wait,
can't do things like pass the debt ceiling, like
my
raise the debt.
question is why politicians would get so pressed over this one issue that they'd actually just let the United States default.
Right. The Patrick evidence indicates that that treaties about human rights, things like treaties about human rights, i.e., the ICC, face objections of violating sovereignty,
I
which means
know
that
they face
everyone
some
would disagree
objections,
with
right?
each
Wait,
other.
every treaty faces some objections. My question is why the
Right. Yeah,
ICC is
exactly.
so
Our
hard.
argument is that the ICC is uniquely bad because it violates US sovereignty at a time where the debt ceiling is where it's like very close to passing the we're raising the debt ceiling or not raising the debt ceiling, which is why uniquely now it triggers the impact.
That's fine. Do you want a quick question?
Sure, let's talk about UUVs. So why would investors feel why would the people that how would they know who made the AI?
They're able to track the manufacturer and then like the individuals responsible, or like, for example, like the executives of the companies would probably be held liable.
Okay, so it's the executives.
Good cross.
Okay.
On their argument on deportations, first, France deports people. Reuters 25 writes that France's deportations increased more than a quarter. 22,000 migrants living illegally were deported in 2024. Increase of nearly 27% forcibly removed means countries in the ICC can still forcibly remove people without getting arrested. Secondly, the reason why it's illegal is because it's done inhumanely. Trump will just do it more humanely if it has to deceive. Three, mass deportations aren't possible. A, funding. Glimmer 24 writes that immigration enforcement carries a hefty price tag. Lawmakers are grappling with how to foot the bill. The new admin will turn to Congress for resources. Lawmakers aired skepticism about paying for removals. Operation would cost $315 billion, and Congress will approve Baker 19 writes that Trump failed to secure funding when Republicans control Congress. People said Trump is crazy. B, resources. Hetrick 24 writes to deport migrants campaign fever dream, sheer number of residents and cooperation needed from native countries make it difficult. It would take many years. Immigration enforcement agencies don't have enough manpower. C, no authority. Hetrick 24 writes that when Trump was president, annual deportation never exceeded 350,000 because Dems have implemented sanctuary policies, limited coordination, and federal enforcement agency. President doesn't have authority to enlist military, not enough judicial and detention capacity. 307 million pending cases. 4, there's no reason why this presidency is different. It should have occurred earlier. 5, past recession should have triggered great power war. Hotspots also existed earlier. The amount does not matter. On their argument about UEVs, first, their interpretation of the statute was some flawed assumption that arguments regarding natural persons can be applied to weapon systems. Spargo 23 writes the element required for responsibility to apply superior subordinate relationship. Article 87 makes clear that superior responsibility concerns commanders with respect to persons under their control. The term forces Article 28 must be reinterpreted in accordance with HIL. The relationship required is understood as interpersonal in nature. ICC factors are largely anthropocentric, and interactions interactions with promotion discipline are only relevant to humans. Authors point to the fact that AWS can be replaced or withdrawn. Decisions are taken with all kinds of weapons. AWS is subordinates is at odds with superior responsibility in its current formulation. The doctrine originates from military spheres. A combatant is a human being only in addressing legal operations. It is inaccurate to refer as a person developing AWS as superior. AWS is not different in any legal relevant way from any other weapon. Third, their evidence is prosecution only occurs if conflict goes beyond legal borders or arms are sold. No evidence is conflict now or arms will be sold, so zero risk. Perception is grounded in reality. Companies won't slam the brakes, especially since they want profit, and guardrails are the last consideration. If the link is true, companies will just offshore to Taiwan to profit, which still provokes escalation. 6 or 3, drones are only deployed to Taiwan invades. Wang 24 is the U.S. plans to deploy drones if Chinese attack on Taiwan. Hellscape deployed unmanned ships to buy time if it's wishful thinking. The U.S. needs to command its unmanned weapon. The PLA pinned the platforms or jammed the signal. Also questioned the U.S.'s ability to produce such a quantity. That means our argument is the best link into UUVs. On the argument about cyber, specifically on the nukes part, first, fiat means that we just need to be joined, not follow everything. Bryson and France accede to yet still have nukes. Just because you accede doesn't mean you won't commit crimes to protect your state. Fiat kills all net ground, which is key to fairness. Mediconstrate on testing the app. Specifically, there's no cyber impact, attribution, restraint, and capabilities. Lewis 2020 writes that non-state actors in states lack capability to cause damage, uncertainty about ability to attribute, unwilling to risk retaliation. No one has died from cyber. It is lazy to equate them to nukes. Opponents have no interest in catastrophic attacks. It would produce equal retaliation. Inadvertent escalation never occurred. Illustrates limit risk. Absence suggests control by advanced states. Secondly, cyber attacks fail and have minimal chance of escalation. Mueller 24 writes that when Russian launch invasion, governments warned about cyber attacks. Hackers to face Ukrainian websites with limited effect. Russian invasion is skew alarmism that is warped cybersecurity. The threat is overblown, minor, and manageable. Focuses on worst case scenarios, fail to contextualize, and neglects costs of cyber attacks against artificial intelligence. Effective countermeasures. Military itself recognizes achievements of sabotage. Modest, Stuxnet, and wrong. Quickly rebuilds. Grids go down in brief and bearable. And cyber warfare is stabilizing. It first scales escalation. Lerner 22 writes that cyber operations provide an important outlet for attention. Cyberspace can offer a way to respond to aggression without physical destruction or loss of life, providing stability. Absence of escalation across cyber attacks cause policymakers to reevaluate assumptions. One of the number tools. Vikram proves this. It says OCOs were used against Iran and replaced the conventional strikes. The latter is worse. Plus thumbs because OCOs were used during the first term. Inserted below. 4. They're stabilizing and prevent destructive WDs. U17 writes a new weapons tech. Overcome imperfect info. Escalating steps of force. Send more precise signals. Bluffing is reduced. New weapon signal capabilities and lead to peace settlements. Limiting new tech narrow coercion to produce more destructive signaling and lead to conflicts. A broader set of targets send more discrete signals. If nations limit, they will employ more destructive levels, encouraging nations to use offensive weapons early. Tech send specific signals and advanced bargaining. Cyber weapons send more nuanced range of signals and reduce casualties and offer more precise control power. Cyber warfare increase the ability to commit an agreement. Mad improve the ability to cooperate. New cyber weapons signals to gradual escalation short of outright hostilities. Pressure leaders revealing signals lead to more international deals and reduction in major wars. 7. Use is not the root cause. Cyber operations / proliferation into active revisions. Actors want to probe U.S. defenses. They would still trigger escalation anyways. Even so, the ICC evidence is about banning deployment, not development of capabilities, which means other actors will still proliferate their capabilities.
All right, cool. Starting time. Now, deportation's advantage. First thing they say is France is doing it, but France is not doing inhumane deportation. Second thing they say that Trump can make it more humane. It's not possible to deport as many people as Trump is doing. You have to put them through inhumane processes because we fundamentally don't have enough detention camps. So the thing they say is it's not possible. A, they say funding, but Trump has more support in Congress now. They've already passed budget resolutions. Second thing they say is that there's no resources. They can get police to help them deport, which is what they did in the past. Third, they say there's too many cases, but they've dropped that Trump is going through, Trump is making sure the cases do not actually go in there, bypassing the judicial process, and they dropped that they are repealing your policies. Fourth thing is that past they dropped that COVID was a brink not a thumper, and it's a unique reason as to why leaders want to go to conflict now because they perceive more vulnerability. UUVs. The first thing they say is that commanders are responsible. Okay, we'll concede that. We'll concede the link on AI liability. But if commanders are still responsible, they will not want to develop UUVs if they perceive that they will be responsible for the consequences in the first place. We'll concede that liability, they don't care about liability, so they continue to develop A. And now the second thing they say, the next thing they say is that there's no evidence that it's going beyond borders, but the U.S. is deploying it in Taiwan, so it is obviously going beyond borders. Third thing they say is that China has things in multiple places, but most of them are most of them are near Taiwan, so that's why our evidence is China feels uniquely vulnerable. It would launch B diversics. The thing is that the U.S. will not deploy them, but they've conceded post-dating evidence saying that we are going to deploy by August 2025 right now because we want to deter China. They say the PA can jam capabilities. No, it cannot. UUVs are getting better and better. It's all about Chinese perception. Cyber advantage. The first thing they say is that fiat doesn't mean we follow. One, they've dropped that. All of their arguments to rely on fiat. Second, they dropped the definition that says to follow this resolution means that they would have to actually follow the Rome Statute. Second, they say that there's no cyber impact-based states act capability, but they've dropped Trump is escalating OCOs now, which is why it causes great power war between countries, which was conceded. Third thing is a bunch of turns about how cyber attacks lead to peace, but they've conceded the warranting in the 1AC as to why it causes war, because adversaries perceive it as preemptive strikes on essential capabilities, which is why they launch attacks back. Fourth thing is that Trump's first term thumbs know he's uniquely escalating OCOs now and doing it far more than before, attacking critical infrastructure, which is what is distinct. Sixth thing is that NC3 is different. No, he's attacking all critical infrastructure. Seventh thing is that other countries will attack. No, the only reason they attack is because of Trump, their case. On the overview, 1, Article 124 was a pass as proposed. Second, Article 98 takes up the Neg no takebacks. U.S. can offer immunity to Israel to BIs with allies to prevent prosecution and thus unconstitutionality. Doesn't take up the Aff officials can still be prosecuted by non-ICC members. Third, it never happens because U.S. prosecutes domestically, never goes to the ICC. There's no evasion. Politics. One, issues are compartmentalized. Everyone has incentives to lift the debt ceiling because economic crush should arm everyone's interest and make them broke. Second, already passed fully 25. Senate adopted a budget resolution. Third, should means immediate summer 94. Should denotes laws immediately effective for Trump is trying to pass dozens of policies he thumbs immunity from infighting. Taiwan. One reason why Taiwan would join the ICC if they knew it would cause an invasion. If high scores are smart to know that not lie would not join and risk losing all its legitimacy and state. That's why they made moves so far. Second, even Taiwan can make the legal argument that doesn't mean they will be accepted by the international community. Chinese backlash prevents China perceives that as so. They're China would veto through UNSC for numerous numbers. Taiwan today. Taiwan has membership in 45 organizations. Cut the next card. Israel. One note, Israeli first strike F-15. Israel strikes exaggerate, take a long time. Israel bomb Syria. Attack if Iran reason to withdraw from the NPT, giving Iran resources. Iran regain popularity. This could hurt Israel ties with the US. Netanyahu operates within strong text. Any operation under approval. It's far from clear and China could gain support. Second, Germany, Thursday, 24. Germany pledged continued support for Israel. I see issuing arrest Maryland. Resume armed device means U.S. can just reassurances Israel connect start allies. What the U.S. only prosecutes people can make genocides use military leaders or low fish considering the good second use military is doom fish. Figure 45. The army Mr. Crewman employed by 50,000 a year unable to deploy military to 30 years. Third U.S. also shift to 23. Their benefits legislative focus in laws for war for genocide, war crimes, prosecuted atrocity crimes, and many criminal codes. Constitutionality. One, ratification of the Constitution of Harris 2K. There's no constitutional obstacle to U.S. treaties that could affect U.S. citizens. The WTO subject U.S. businesses and process and non-mere quorum. Their statute comports safeguards with citizen crimes in U.S. ICC jurisdiction. 3, U.S. military courts. Second, Germany using suicidal. Third, Supreme specific to the argument. Third, Supreme Court dumps and start that zombie policies. Fourth, third, one the means that gets implemented even if it's unconstitutional. Lead penalty cabinet saying cost strike down even as they just amended it because after it to be passed.
Good for Cross.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have the first question?
Yeah.
So can you just re-explain your front line to the France argument at the top of deportations?
France's deportations aren't inhumane on the same scale.
Okay, but they say it's quote forcibly removed. Also, your Myanmar evidence says
forcibly removed is what a deportation is. Yeah, forcibly removed is like what a deportation fundamentally is. The difference is how inhumane the deportation actually is.
So can you read me a line from your evidence that says it depends specifically how deep, like how inhumane it is? Because it says, quote, migrants who are deported across the U.S. and Mexican border are, quote, forcibly displaced, and this would be caused as violence. But your evidence doesn't indicate any other form of way to determine.
It says violence, psychological oppression, detention,
but it says
abuse
are,
of
quote,
power.
forcibly displaced. Like that's the only line.
Yeah.
That's the only line you have read.
Wait, it is defining forced displacement as violence, detention,
also, how can you just
psychological.
assert that France's deportations aren't humane?
Okay.
You do not.
I'm answering that, right? It says, it says violence and psychological oppression. Your evidence does not say France is doing psychologically oppressive deportations or deportations that are severely harming the livelihoods of immigrants, so it doesn't apply. Also, this goes back to the argument we made about how the ICC primarily prosecutes people who do very, very bad things. So, like, which also takes out your arguments.
Okay, that's fine. You can have a question.
Okay. Let's talk about constitutionality, right? So your argument is that because the Supreme Court does strike downs, it destroys the separation of powers, right?
Yeah, like it's just that it also creates loopholes because there's a new thing you have to add.
Okay, yeah. Give me a quote that says Trump can do loopholes and implement his policies.
Yeah, let me just pull up my evidence really quickly.
It does not say what you wanted to say.
Okay, sure. The point, like, it doesn't say Trump specifically, but the Cruz evidence does say it will create loopholes that Trump will exploit because he wants to be an imperial power, which is also what the Lester evidence says.
Wait, it says loopholes that jettisons the government's authority. Wouldn't that hurt Trump's authority so he can't pass?
No, the government as in the separate, like the other branches of the government to check back on each other.
Federal government is specific to Trump.
No, it's in the context of checking. Tristan. It's not in the context of invoking action. It's in the context of checking back each other, which is obviously different. The federal government's power to launch a nuke doesn't change when you ratify the ICC. What does change is the ability between between Congress and the judicial branch to check back on Trump when you ratify the ICC.
Wait, why? Like, what part of the ICC would change that?
Like, I'm obviously not an expert on this question, but our evidence that is written by professors and experts concludes that it would create loopholes that specifically make Trump's ability to make decisions a lot easier because he wouldn't be restricted.
Wait, yeah, tell me why.
I have a question really quickly.
Tell me why this specific treaty will cause loopholes.
Like, I don't know why it's this specific one. I'd say like any treaty, but the point is we haven't ratified a treaty.
Any treaty.
No, not any treaty. A treaty that amends our Constitution.
Cross-sex is fine, and you said any treaty.
No. Because it's a treaty that amends our Constitution. Also, new response.
Our case, Wang, their case. Is everyone ready? Cool. First, on their argument about Article 98, we'll concede that fiat makes a session binding, which definitely answers this argument. Also, regardless, our argument is perceptual, which means that it doesn't matter. Now, we're gonna go for Israel. Trump has strengthened our alliances with Israel via conditioning military assistance on diplomatic alignment to resolve Gaza and Iran diplomatically, as opposed to using strikes in war. However, affirming forces enforcement of arrest warrants destroying America's relationship with Israel as it reverses Netanyahu's belief Trump is on his side. In any event, Israel instability causes nuclear desperation. Hezbollah and ISIS are targets. 200 nukes could be used, which causes extinction by creating a post-war environment too cold and dark to grow food. On their responses, first, they say that Israel first strike should have already triggered, but our argument is that yes, Israel may have gotten attacked in the past, but the reason why they haven't struck back yet is because they know that the U.S. is backing them, which is why they know that the U.S. will always come to their support. Second, they say that Germany continues giving them aid, but they have conceded that the U.S. is especially key as the most powerful country in the world and Israel's largest supplier. It means that if they are cut off, it doesn't matter how many other countries want to support it. It means that the U.S. specifically will not be able to support them anymore and will even be forced to arrest Netanyahu. Finally, they say that reassurance is solved. Our evidence indicates that the U.S. is forced to arrest Netanyahu, which is really bad. Also, their evidence doesn't say that we would reassure Israel. It's just about sending aid in the status quo. That obviously gets cut post-Aff because the ICC thinks that that Netanyahu is a war criminal and stops the U.S. from sending aid post-Aff. On Wang. First, our argument always on time frame is perceptual because as soon as you affirm, Israel thinks that they can immediately get arrested and start striking. Also, our escalation scenario is a lot faster because it's just about Israel pressing the big red button, whereas theirs has to actually do things like make war plans, but they have conceded our evidence, which indicates that 200 nuclear weapons are enough to cause extinction. That comes before their argument, A, because intermediate actors can solve their arguments, and B, because living longer is always better because it increases the value of life. And second is that it turns their argument because when there's a huge war in the Middle East, and the ICC is going to focus on that instead of prosecuting the places that they talk about. And finally, third, turns all of their arguments because deportations become easier when we're in a conflict, and AI and cyber all get deployed because we're all fighting each other, which always on scope because it happens globally. On their case. On deportations, they massively mishandled the response that France still deports people inhumanely. They just say it's humane, but it really isn't because our evidence indicates that they forcibly do it, which proves that the U.S. can still do it post-Aff. Second, they have also conceded that Mexico literally will not take people back, which means that we can't deport people because there's nowhere to deport them to. And finally, they have also conceded there's no capability because they don't have enough enforcers. They just say that we can get more police, but they have conceded that even last time when Congress was red, Trump still wasn't able to. On UUVs. First, they have entirely conceded that companies will offshore to make a profit. That means that there's no prosecution from the United States because companies can just develop UAVs elsewhere and send them. Second, they have also conceded that the drones are only deployed if China invades Taiwan. They say their evidence posted, but it just says that we send the drones, not that we deploy them. On C3. We are going for the impact turn. It was massively mishandled. They have conceded that Trump already used a cyber attack on Iran instead of conventionally striking them in his first term. Their own evidence concludes that and says that it's an alternative to conventional military action. We've cyber attacked people so many times, i.e. China and Russia, but that haven't triggered the impact yet, which obviously empirically denies their argument. But they have conceded that this is actually sort of better than the alternative, which is conventionally striking people because that causes more death because cyber attacks are often limited and don't cause the tit for tat escalation they talk about because it means that countries are less likely to miscalculate when it's only tit for tat. Really simple negative ballot.
Our case, Wang, their case. On deportations, we'll concede that there's not enough enforcers, which means that Trump's not going to be able to pass the deportations stuff anyways. On UUVs, we'll concede that they're just going to be offshore to Taiwan, and that they're only going to be sent and not deployed. At that point, there's no offense anywhere else in the ground. We're going for our argument about cyber. What is the argument specifically? Trump's cyber policy is extremely aggressive. Aggressive with the use of offensive cyber operations on the horizon. OCOs cause nuclear war and extinction via famine, as adversaries interpret as preemptive strikes and retaliate, causing tit-for-tat escalation on essential services that lead to conflict. But affirming solves. The Rome Statute actually bans OCOs as they're interpreted as war crimes, and the officials will become complying as they don't want to be prosecuted by the ICC. The response against this are not great. Firstly, they say cyber is stumped because it's been done many times in the past. No, what Tristan tells you and what we've said since case is that it's uniquely offensive right now because it's targeting critical infrastructure, which has never been done before. And our evidence delineates that it will be spilling over into the physical domain and be done to other great powers like Russia, Iran, and China. Then they say that it's better than the alternative, which is conventionally striking people. No, specifically, even if we conventionally strike people, it wouldn't be attacking critical infrastructure, and we're definitely not doing that to our great power, great power adversaries. And secondly, even if like the alternative is striking people, that's also banned under Rome, which means that probably won't happen. At that point, you can look to the comparative. Specifically, we're winning on two reasons. Firstly, try or die. We've conceded uniqueness, so extinction is inevitable in the status quo, which firstly non-makes their arguments, but also means the only risk of solvency for inevitable extinction is to vote affirmative. Secondly, the time frame. Trump is set to begin OCO soon, and escalation is quick. U.S. cybersecurity systems are weak right now, meaning retaliatory cyber attacks by adversaries quickly shred critical infrastructure, forcing larger tit-for-tat conflict. At that point, their Israel scenario takes a lot longer, insofar as they drop that Israel has a lot lot of reassurances, specifically billions of dollars in ammunition from the United States, which means that they're able to hold out for several more months, whereas our time frame is basically immediate. At that point, none of their prerequisites matter insofar as we cause extinction before their scenario even triggers. Even then, they've made a lot of mistakes on their case. Firstly, let's talk about Article 98. It specifically takes out the neg as they show that the US is able to offer immunity to the affirmative, but it doesn't take out the affirmative because the officials can be prosecuted by 9 ICC members. They just see that like fiat will make secession binding. Yeah, fiat means that Article 98 also passes. At that point, you can go to Israel specific. Firstly, remember Tristan's response that Israel will never first strike because it knows it has no political support and that it knows that it will only cause Iran to develop a bomb faster. They say that like US support is what changes it uniquely. No, either way, Israel knows that first striking is horrible, which is why they never do it. Then they say that like the US is key because it's Israel's largest supplier, but they concede that Germany is in the ICC, is still able to give arms, which means that being in the ICC does not stop the US from giving arms. At that point, the US will still be able to give arms, which means that Israel will still have support from the United States. Even then, they say that the US is forced to arrest Netanyahu. Not true at all. Insofar as literally every other ICC member is not forced to arrest Netanyahu despite being in the ICC. At that point, they have billions of dollars of reassurances, their time frame super low, and we know that Israel would not first strike. Can cleanly affirm.
Okay. On cyber, why would the US have to follow ICC mandate?
The link we went for was that officials would be deterred and wouldn't launch the offensive cyber operations.
Yeah, also
Sure, that's
there's also no arguments made throughout the round as to why the US would not cooperate. I mean, if Sumith wants, he can make a new response in final.
Sure, that's fine. You can have a question.
Okay, that's cool. Can you tell me exactly why Israel would be scared when you affirm?
Yeah, because they Netanyahu's literally gonna get arrested, which means that
Okay.
he definitely
Why
gets
isn't Germany arresting Netanyahu?
fiat makes secession binding, which was an argument that we extended that you read.
Yeah. But okay, like Germany also has to listen to the ICC.
Wait, okay. A, this was not an argument that you made to answer your fiat argument. B, fiat makes secession binding. Yes, Germany may be part of the ICC, but they clearly haven't acceded properly if they're not following the mandate. But your own definition says that accede means we have to follow every part of it, which means that fiat means that we have to arrest Netanyahu post-staff.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, so we have to arrest him, right? That's all we have to do.
We have to arrest him. We probably have to cut aid too because we're funding.
All right, what evidence says we have to cut aid?
I mean,
the Cohen evidence and the
Yeah,
back.
give me a quote. Just give me a quote.
Sure.
Leon, do you have it open? And the ballot.
Can you do that? I'm on your doc. Can you do that?
Oh.
Also, we have to arrest him like legally, right? We can't just barge into Israel and like.
Well, the argument is that he can't do he's going to travel to the US and he can't.
Yeah, the point is he can't do diplomatic.
Okay, so he has to travel to the US.
Well, he's cool. No, it's about diplomatic engagement.
Also, it's about the point of supporting an organization that literally hates him and like the whole world hates him.
Netanyahu can probably afford Zoom Premium, right?
What?
No, like this is also not an argument made. This is not an argument made in the last speech or the speech before.
I'm making it now.
I don't know why.
Okay, well, that's too late.
It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Maybe for the
Wait,
people.
Justin,
like,
also check DMs.
Oh yeah, bet. You can have a question while I'm checking DMs.
Okay, so I guess on your argument regarding cyber, you say conventional strikes are banned, but like then if the US gets cyber attacked, how would the US respond?
It will probably not
More cyber attacks. That's what our argument is. Like,
so
it's
where's the nuclear escalate? How does the US nuclearly respond then?
Like, it's all right. So this was not questioned earlier, but essentially, like, cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, blah 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 blah. It feels used under the pressures because critical infrastructure is being attacked.
Wait, you mean how does the US respond?
Like, no, if a conventional strike is banned, how can the US nuke another country?
It can't. That's a good thing. That's
yeah. So how does it?
Exactly.
Cause extinction.
We're saying that it's going to proliferate like defensive cyber operations, which means that
it's also the US It's also the US offensive cyber operations against other countries. Causes other countries to also launch nukes.
You just said that conventional conflict is banned.
Hey, Leon, it's Crossfire.
The indict was massively mishandled. The only thing they have said is first that critical infrastructure didn't happen earlier. Why can't a conventional strike not hit critical infrastructure and not do even more damage and physical damage to the infrastructure, which is also a new argument. It was not made in the last speech. The second argument they've made is that is that it wouldn't happen that conventional strikes are banned. There's no reason for why conventional strikes are banned, because if they are banned, then the US cannot launch a retaliatory nuclear strike, and that would cause extinction. So you have to assume that they aren't banned in order for the extinction series to happen. Otherwise, you negate on presumption. At that point, they have dropped that cyber attacks specifically prevent conventional strikes because it serves as a second option to deter aggression, because otherwise the Trump would have launched conventional strike against Iran in 2019, which was a dropped argument. This is the most likely extinction scenario because we have cyber attack countries multiple times before, but no escalation has occurred. But you do know a conventional strike would result in a strike back, which would result in nuclear retaliation, which is a lot worse. At best, this is a terminal defense of their argument and means they have no offense. Now, our case, the Article 98 argument does not make sense. They have conceded that fiat solves. It means the US is forced to arrest Netanyahu post app because they have to follow every aspect of the law. They say fiat means the Article 98 passes too. No, it destroys these agreements because they go against the ICC. Now, the Israel scenario. Trump has strengthened our alliance via Israel via conditioning military assistance on diplomatic alignment to resolve Gaza and Iran diplomatically, as opposed to using strikes of war. However, affirming enforcement of arrest wars, destroying America's relation with Israel, as a reverse of Netanyahu to believe that Trump is on his side. In any event, Israel instability causing nuclear desperation. Hezbollah and ISIS are targeting 200 nukes could be used to cause extinction, creating a post-war environment too cold to grow food. The first response is that Israel wouldn't have strike because it caused proliferation, but Israel views it as a die or die scenario. The second response is that Germany's into ICC, but they've conceded that they themselves have made an argument that fiat means we have to follow the laws, and fiat means that we have to arrest him and cannot support him. Also, it's about the fact that we're supporting an organization that is against them, and that's about the world against him. The third argument is that there's no evidence that says we have to arrest him. The Cohen evidence says that now the Wang debate is severely mishandled. They've conceded that our arguments are perception. There's 200 nukes are only needed to cause extinction, but they have to win that countries launch the nukes first, and they launch at least 50 nukes in time. But cyber tit for tat escalation takes a while, which is a dropped argument time frame to control your ballot, because they've conceded that in a war, more cyber operations get used, which is a dropped argument, which means it turns their argument. It means there's no solvency to the argument. They've dropped that time frame, means there's a time for intervening actions to solve their scenario, which means the only risk of offense is one where a world where we live, and that's the Meg.
Time starts. Now, extend cyber terms. Cyber policy is aggressive with the use of offensive cyber agents on the horizon. OCOs cause nuke war and extinction via famine. Adversaries interpret it as preemptive strikes and retaliate, creating tit-for-tat escalation on essential services that lead to conflict that Aff solves. Romance OCO offensive are interpreted as war crimes. Officials comply. They don't want to be prosecuted by the U.S. Personally, it says that conventional strikes hit critical infrastructure, but they've dropped that the U.S. is not doing these conventional strikes versus great powers like Russia, Norco, Iran, because they know these things are suicidal, which means that there's no offense off the turn. Moreover, the impact turn does not matter because they've now read impact defense to our arguments. Even if cyber attacks prevent conventional war, they've dropped that these Trump cyber attacks will cause great power war because it attacks adversaries' critical infrastructure, which causes retaliatory strikes and tit-for-tat escalation. Third thing they say is that pastime stunt. They've dropped that these cyber operations are uniquely going into the physical domain now against adversaries that we haven't attacked before, like Russia and North Korea, which is why it will cause great power escalation in the status quo. All of this was conceded. Wang. When they've conceded our triad wing, we've one conceded uniqueness, so you know extinction is inevitable in the status quo, which non-uniques all of their arguments. It means that the only risk of solvency for inevitable extinction is to vote after the triad wing was conceded. So was our time for Ming. Trump has said to begin OCO soon as escalation is quick because U.S. cybersecurity systems are weak now, meaning retaliatory cyber attacks by adversaries quickly shred critical infrastructure, forcing larger different attack conflict quickly. Comparatively, they've dropped that Israel has weapons, so they can hold out for a while before they do a massive offensive strike. So their time frame is so far into the future. This is a conceded response to their time frame, so we're definitely ahead. But the disadvantage. One, first, they've dropped the impact defense that says that Israel has no political support to launch nukes in the first place, and they wouldn't do it because they know Iran would only further develop nuclear weapons if Israel doesn't strike. These were conceded responses in summary and not interacted well in final. Secondly, they dropped this Article 98 means the U.S. can offer immunity to Israel's president, which is something that is allowed under the ICC, so the U.S. does not have to enforce arrest warrants, and that the U.S. can do reassurances with weapons, which stumps their perceptual link because it happens faster and you can reassure with weapons. They've read no link evidence otherwise.
Okay, basically, I think this round starts with a lot of arguments, but thankfully there's not that many in the back half. And so like the way that the round kind of like breaks down for me is that there's two forms of Wang that are pretty cleanly accepted. It's this try or die Wang and then time frame Wang. And like I think I personally look to the Wang first and see who's winning that. And so on the try or die Wang, I think that the Aff is like, oh, it's try or die because we're winning uniqueness. And the Neg is like, no, it's die or die because the Aff can't solve the problem. And so I don't think there's really a comparison given here on either side. And I think it's like two ships passing in the night. So I personally feel like I would have to intervene to kind of interact with the try or die Wang. The other form of Wang that I get is time frame. Time frame is also meta weighted for me at some point. I think by Leon, and he's like, oh, like time frame comes first because like if we're all dead, nothing else matters, blah blah blah, like we'll all be extinct before. And so I think at that point I can look to the time frame weighing there. And I also think that there's some missed warrants here, like so that the way the round comes down is again like kind of there's two forms of time frame weighing, and I don't really know if they're responding to each other, but I'm getting the argument that like Trump is going to begin his like offensive cyber soon, and so their time frame triggers first, and that Israel has weapons so they can hold out. But I think that the Neg's link into Israel is not about Israel having weapons. It's about perceptually that like they're going to get stressed if like Netanyahu is like getting arrested, and like they love the US, and so if the US doesn't like them, they're really lonely and like they have no friends, and so like that's like then Israel's alone. So I don't think Israel having weapons is responsive to the link. I don't really know, like, so I feel like there's a risk of time frame here from the negative. And I also think it's conceded that like Israel just launching a nuke probably leads to war faster compared to cyber, because cyber, like everyone kind of agrees in the round that cyber starts from like little small infrastructure attacks to like bigger attacks to like maybe we're sending some soldiers to like then a bomb, whereas Israel is just going to send a bomb. So then I look at the Israel scenario, and on the Israel scenario, I do think that this Iran response, that there's no Israeli first strike, is made pretty cleanly in rebuttal. And like, I don't know if the warrants there are super well responded to by the negative, that like specifically Israel knows that like they're going to lead to a bunch of war, etc. Like they don't want to cause the first strike. But I also think this Netanyahu arrest warrant that the neg is making is pretty conceded until final, because the response I get is a response in cross that's like there's no evidence, but they have evidence. And then I also get the Article 98 response. I think the Article 98 debate is really messy throughout the whole round and isn't really clarified. So like it doesn't play a huge role in my decision, because I think the clearest implication that I get is, at least on my flow, new to me in final, where it's like, oh, there's like immunity for like Netanyahu. And I think it should have been implicated way more, because if there's immunity for Netanyahu, I don't think there's a risk of the negative. But article, like at least in the way the round looks to me, is like Article 98 isn't implicated enough. And I think that there's a very tiny baby risk that Israel first strikes, because they're worried about Netanyahu and it's a perceptual link, and there's like a die or die scenario. And then on the Germany thing, that Germany thumps, I think it's pretty conceded that fiat means we're like following the laws. And so if the US accedes, we have to arrest Netanyahu. I don't think the Germany thumps response is interactive with that. And I think the Aff themselves argues that fiat means we accede. And so like the Aff is making that argument themselves, and it's conceded by the neg. So I feel like I have more of an incentive to buy that. And then the only other argument on like thumps and like reassurances solved is that like we don't have to arrest Netanyahu, but they give me the Cohen evidence, which says we have to arrest Netanyahu. And then this reassurances solve thing, like I still think that the warrant or the link that the neg is going for in the back half is that it's like perceptual, and like if their leader is being threatened, then Israel will freak out. So the fact that they still have weapons, because like the cutting off aid link that they have in constructive isn't really gone for in the back half. So because I do think that response takes out the cutting out aid link, so then there's a risk of offense on Israel here. And then on the Aff flow on cyber, I don't think this response, or like I think the response on like cyber doesn't escalate and it's better than conventional war is not well frontlined until a little too late for me, because I think the front lines I'm getting are like there's just too new in the back half about how like we're attacking this new critical infrastructure, and I don't really also know what attacking new critical infrastructure means. And then I also get this argument that's like conventional strikes will be banned, but if conventional strikes are banned, nothing is happening anywhere. And I actually do presume Aff, it's in my paradigm, but that's not relevant, because I just think like I also think there's like impact defense response here, but they're not implicating like this response to cyber isn't being implicated as a turn, it's being implicated as terminal defense by the end of the round. And I do think the Vikram rehighlight is conceded that like there have been OCOs in the past and we haven't seen any like escalation. I do think it's implicated pretty well as terminal defense. So I don't really see any risk of a cyber scenario happening, insofar as like at best case for Leon and Sumith, then like cyber is better than the alternative, and at worst case for them, there's just no escalation happening from cyber. And so I negate on risk of the Israel scenario.